Do you ever wake up in the morning and say to yourself, what in the world is going on? The whole place went to hell in a handbag and you don't even own a handbag. I'm telling you, if you want Xanax through your hearing aids, then this is the thing you should do. You should listen to the Randi Lupo Show because she covers everything from comedians to writers and everything in between. She's entertaining and informative at the same time. She's everything that you wished your mother-in-law would be, and she isn't. But Randi, she was born in Brooklyn, New York, a different Brooklyn than most, a two-fare zone Brooklyn. Randi brings his unique outlook to the show, and Lord knows we do need a different outlook. So now, put down your lattes, get your fat ass sitting down wherever you are, because you're about to see and hear something you never heard before. And that's our host, Randi Lupo.
Hi, everyone. In studio today, I have a special guest, Faith Borkowsky, author of Reading Intervention Behind School Walls, Why Children Continue to Struggle. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm so happy you're here. I loved your book, I have to tell you. It really a lot of great information in here. Can I ask you, what was your motivation for writing Reading Intervention Behind School Walls?
Well, I've been an educator for 30 years. I started off as a teacher, reading specialist, regional reading coach, administrator. And what really bothered me when I first started teaching, I had a third grade class. I thought that what I learned in school would work for most children.
Right. We all do. We all think that.
Yeah. And sadly, that did not happen. Many children in third grade were not reading. I thought that I was taught all these strategies and I was going to conquer the world as a teacher. And yet I felt inadequate. So I decided to go for my master's in reading, and I thought that would be the answer. And unfortunately, I might have helped some more children, but I still wasn't really hitting the children who had profound reading difficulties. And then one day, I was in a bookstore on Long Island, fast forward many years later, and a book literally fell off the shelf, and it changed my life. Really, it was by Dr. Diane McGinnis, and it was Why Your Child Can't Read and What We Could Do About It. And honestly, it made so much sense to me. That book just resonated with me. And it was all about teaching children using a phonics-based approach, from sound to print, and teaching children the alphabetic code from the bottom up. And I ended up getting my own training, and I went to Washington, D.C. for training, and then I started to pursue training in what's called the Orton-Gillingham approach. And this training made a world of difference, and I was finally able to help children and saw a difference.
That is fantastic. That really is. When you started, was it? I'm thinking back to when my kids were learning, and I can't remember the names. I remember they would say, "However it sounds, spell it." Was that how you started teaching? You know, like write it as it sounds, and like that kind of free. Is that how it was for you?
Yeah, and that's not a terrible thing to use inventive spelling. Kids naturally want to try to write what they hear.
Yeah.
The problem is when it goes too long, and children are not taught correctly the alphabetic code, and they repeatedly make the same mistakes, and they get really good at those mistakes. And you see these spelling errors going up to 4th, 5th, 6th grade, and it's not cute anymore.
Right.
And there has to be a point where they're taught correctly, understanding how the English language works. And once they do understand this, even children with learning disabilities can read.
That's so good to know, because a lot of children have learning disabilities, even some adults. I wanted to ask you, who is the target audience for your book?
So I wrote it mainly for parents to be aware that if they're seeing signs in their children at a young age and they're told, well, just wait, give it a chance, that they really shouldn't. The earlier, the better. Early intervention works, and getting the proper help works. And they really should start exploring ways that work for children and not just what's been in the schools for years and years, because that might work for some children. And many children, you could give them any method and they'll be able to read.
Sure.
I used to say, give a kid a book, the ones who could do it could read in a closet. They could be taught in a closet. It wouldn't matter. But for children who struggle, they need a very explicit, systematic approach that's based on the philosophy of Orton-Gillingham. And once children get the right approach, they can thrive. They could read, they could spell, they could write. And will it be a struggle for them? Yeah, it might always be somewhat of a struggle, but they will learn to be able to advocate for themselves what they need.
Wow. Now, do you work with kids with all different types of learning disabilities? Is it one that you specialize in, or do you do work with different types of students?
Well, 80% of children with learning disabilities have a reading disability. So mostly I'm working with children who have dyslexia. Even if it has not been classified as dyslexia, where it was not determined by a neuropsychologist, I could recognize it based on what I've seen. There's a struggle with just the decoding piece. They have other signs that let you know that they have some problems and they need a different approach.
Right. And auditory processing, does that
Exactly.
go along with it?
That
or
goes
is that totally separate?
No. Many of these issues overlap. And you will see that auditory processing, attention deficit disorder, you will see that many of these same problems will overlap. And children who struggle, yeah, they don't have the attention to learn how to read. Would you? If you're
No.
if you're being given something
I
that's
still
so
don't know how
hard
to
for
read,
you,
Faith.
their attention is somewhere else. And then the opposite is true. Sometimes children who have attentional issues can't pay attention and they can't follow along. But I have found that many times it's the opposite, that it's the academic problems that cause some of the attentional issues.
So if those are remedied, then the child can actually sit and focus, you found?
Better, yes. And I've seen it in front of me with my own eyes, where children all of a sudden will settle down and be able to pay attention when they feel that they are being successful.
I love it. Can you give me an example of what would help a struggling student? Is there different? Is it multi-sensory?
Yes.
What helps them to become
Yes.
better readers?
So a multisensory approach is definitely helpful. That is what I use in my practice, what I
Because
found
you have
works.
your own business, High Five Literacy.
And I've been doing this for years. When children are able to move tiles, write at the same time as they're saying something, being able to put words together, break them apart using letter tiles, color coding, everything with combining the auditory piece, the visual, and the tactile will help a child be able to read, write, and spell.
You know what I noticed is getting a little off topic, but whenever I'm at a restaurant or something, I always see kids on an iPad playing a game, or on either if they're old enough they have their own cell phone, or even the little ones are on an iPad, their parent's cell phone, the parent is on a cell phone. Everyone has their own device. And I know, and I was reading in the book that you also see this, that everyone's sort of just tuned into their electronics.
Exactly.
Does that impede learning at all?
Absolutely. When we're not practicing our conversational skills, we're not going to understand language. And reading comprehension is language comprehension. So if they're not getting practice in being able to understand how people ask questions and how to answer questions, they won't understand it when they're reading. It's just an extra layer that they have to get through when they're reading. But it's all based on language comprehension, being able to listen and understand and follow language. And they're not getting that practice when they're constantly writing in shorthand on their phones.
I totally hear you. Hopefully that could be addressed more. Maybe parents can be educated that, you know what, there's a time and a place for everything. Electronics are fine and important in our society, but, you know, regular conversations around the dinner table still need to be had.
Absolutely. It's so important for children, young children, to get the conversation, to be able to hear songs and nursery rhymes and to play and to be able to interact with adults and to hear higher level language, because that's how their vocabularies develop when they're younger. Before they're able to read for themselves, they have the vocabulary from listening to higher level vocabulary. So it's cumulative. The more language they hear, the better they are.
Are those Dr. Seuss books good? Are those rhyming books? Are those good for language?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Dr. Seuss is wonderful. Nursery rhymes, playing rhyming games with children, sound games. That's all preparation for what they need when then the letters are matched to sounds. And that's letter-sound correspondence.
Right.
That's the alphabetic code. So it's all preparation for what they'll need.
That's fantastic. We'll be right back with our guest, Faith Borkowsky. We're back with author and academic coach, Faith Borkowsky. Faith, I loved your book, as I said earlier, and one of the things you address when you work with remediation for these students is how you begin with them. And I thought that was so important because I also work with children, and I realized that they're so used to like having failures because they're struggling. Mm-hmm. It's, you know, if there's an issue, they're struggling, and they're so used to failure that I feel there's a lot of anxiety. Mm-hmm. And I know when they come to you at first, can you talk about how you handle it?
Sure. Well, as you said, yeah, why should they trust anyone? The system has failed them. They definitely have trust issues. Many of them come feeling that this is just going to be another bad experience. So I really do feel it's important first to develop a relationship. And even if it takes a little time at the beginning, that is not a reading strategy.
Right, that's not totally academic.
Exactly.
Off out of the gate.
But basically to help them to be calm. What works? Take a breath. Let's even just do some movement because that's important. Children think better when they move. So
I found that I find that in the schools they're taking what they call brain breaks
exactly,
now.
And I talked about that in the book as well. And there's not enough movement in school. Children do need to move, and they do need to know how to be calm. I also was trained in mindfulness, and I try to bring some of those strategies to children if they need it.
Is that a form of meditation, mindful meditation, or is it a little different for kids?
Yeah, I mean, I don't start doing a whole mindfulness session, but basically...
I'd love for you to do that with me.
But basically, it's just to really be able to focus, to be in the moment.
Sure.
Because children who have difficulties, they're thinking of other things. We talked about those attentional issues. So to be in the moment, to really be able to focus on their breath, to be focused on just what they're doing, they have to relax. They have to learn to relax. We don't know necessarily how to relax. And definitely school can be a place where children who experience failure will have anxiety issues. So
Absolutely. I see it all day long, and it really is. It's truly hard to focus when you're thinking of all these other things. The last thing you could do is focus on the assignment before you.
Exactly. So I do think for some, it's not necessary for everyone. It depends on the student. For some, I mean, I had a student who really contemplated suicide. And I talked about that in the book. The last thing he needed was someone else trying to teach him how to read before he could trust me. So
I mean, that's how important it is. That
Right.
that has to be so rewarding to be able.
It is.
To help us, especially that student you're referring to was in such distress, such
Exactly.
extreme distress to be at that point. And
yes,
and
his
you were-
mother pulled him out of school and homeschooled
can I
him
ask
for
how
a
old
year.
he was?
He was starting 4th grade, and he was not getting what he needed, and the mother fought with the school district many times, and it didn't matter. He wasn't getting what he needed, and she finally decided, I'm just going to try to do it myself. And then she had contacted me, and then I worked with her, and we worked as a team. And that's how I work with all my families. It's a team effort, because once a week or twice a week of tutoring will not make a difference. You need to have the strategies practiced.
Absolutely. So do you give them homework to
I
to
give
carry
them,
over?
not a ton, but I give them some strategies that we're doing. I show the parents how to do the strategies. I send home what's called decodable books. So they're practicing the strategies with the proper materials, not guided reading books like they get in school, which really what that is, they're little books where the alphabetic code is all mixed up. With the decodable books, you're practicing exactly what you're teaching, so they get enough practice and repetition doing this, so then they could transfer it over to just regular reading books.
So it's the repetition also that it's very helpful with learning this skill.
Absolutely. Many of these kids have working memory issues, short-term memory issues, so you need to practice it, overlearn it. It's really called overlearning. So they get this, they practice it until it becomes natural for them. And that's something that I think in the schools, even when they are given the right approach, even if they're given the phonics approach, when they have the wrong materials to practice with, they're not getting enough practice opportunities. And that will diminish what you see.
I wanted to know, now I've noticed the trend, a lot of the teachers are going for Orton-Gillingham training. Do you think that's going to make a huge difference? Will that be more helpful going forward when teachers are trained in this approach?
I do. I think that the training is important, but I don't think they're getting enough training. I see a lot of districts will invest in a 3-day overview type of training rather than something that's ongoing. And I really think that it needs to be looked at more carefully, where the teachers are getting proper training, embedded coaching and development with administrators enforcing this. The problem that I've seen, I've gone into school districts where teachers were trained, and I was one of those trainers.
Sure.
Yet the school is telling them to do something entirely different. So not everyone's on the same page. So unless you
That's a
have an
huge problem if
understanding
everyone's not on the
from
same
the top down, it's not going to make a huge difference. And that's been a problem.
It's unfortunate.
It is.
It's unfortunate. What do you think of the listening programs that some of the schools offer? Does that help the children with phonics or become better readers?
For some, if they have auditory processing disorders, yes, what the listening programs do is it slows down speech so they could start hearing the individual phonemes. But what research shows now, it gets mixed reviews, because you could really work on phonemic awareness and phonics at the same time, and maybe just reinforce the phonemic awareness while you're doing the phonics without having a separate program.
Sure.
So it gets to be expensive, and it doesn't necessarily have high returns.
So basically, you think it's because it's not integrated enough?
I think that everyone's looking for one quick fix.
Sure. And that doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. And so there are children on these listening programs who really don't need it. And then the ones who do need it, as you said, it's not necessarily integrated with the phonics instruction that they should be getting. So it really should be a supplement. It's not going to do it by itself. And a lot of money has been wasted on it.
That's a shame. That is really a shame. But because
It happens.
and then it's the students that suffer.
Always. And that is the pattern that I've seen, that the interests of the adults will come before the kids, unfortunately.
Is it? You think that will change in time? Do you think we could change that?
I wish I could be optimistic. Research now has been around for a long time that a phonics-based, systematic, explicit approach is the way children should learn how to read. Yet, people ignore the research for a number of reasons. So I would like to be optimistic. I'm thinking now that dyslexia is more in the limelight than it's ever been. And I am hopeful that with these groups that I see online, that more people are going to be aware of this and be able to fight for the right instruction. But over 30 years, I haven't seen a huge difference. And the same types of things keep going on, and it hasn't changed.
That I come from a family of learning disabilities. It just seems to run in my family. I don't know if it's genetic. I really don't
There is
have
a genetic component.
So you do feel that there's a genetic component, and I would love to think that children can be helped. I would hope that adults can be helped, because my fear is what happens when these kids graduate high school. What is their future going to bring if they can't get these basics down and be able to fill out an application, read a job application, fill it out properly.
Absolutely.
It's really something. It's really
Well,
something
I
we
think
need
it's
to
a
think
combination of two things. Yes, I think that, as you said, learning disabilities tend to be like dyslexia. There is a genetic component. It doesn't have to be. The other piece of this is that it might not be a learning disability, but because we're teaching children with faulty strategies that don't work for most kids, children are falling through the cracks. And I even have a chapter in my book called Dyslexia versus Dyslexia.
I remember that.
And it's not that the teachers are to blame here. I'm not blaming teachers.
Because I know teachers work so hard.
do.
They really want
They
to see
do.
success for their
They
students.
do.
That's why they went into the profession.
Absolutely. But I think there's a lot of bad information out there. And I think that it starts with the university teacher education programs, that they should be held responsible for passing on information that teachers should know.
Right.
But you can't teach what you don't know. And then teachers hold on to what they do know, and they become unwilling to change because it's hard to change. Change is hard.
It is hard because you get stuck in your ways, and if you're used to doing this for a number of years. So do you think continued education on the part of the teachers is helpful to keep making advances?
Absolutely. This type of professional development should be available, but at the same time, a lot of times it goes to waste because they get a piece of information here or something there, and it's not enforced from the top down. And then an administrator will say, no, well, I want you doing guided reading, and I want you doing some of these other things. And then all of a sudden, what they knew works, they can't do anymore. Even if they have the information, you see they're torn between what an administrator is telling them to do, what expectations are for the district. Obviously, now with Common Core, there's a lot of pressure on schools. And like I said, who suffers? The kids. And tutoring businesses would not be thriving if it was easily done in the schools.
I hear you. Do you think that, so what you're saying is even kids, even if they have an IEP, an individual education plan, it's still not being remedied?
No, because most of my students have IEPs. Most of my students are classified with some type of language disability, whether it's speech, it could be they have OT issues, they have all these types of issues, and they have IEPs, and yet I still see them, and they still need a lot of work. And there are children in self-contained special ed where you would think fewer children, you could do more.
Sure.
Teachers, assistants, they're getting a lot of help. But if they're not getting the right type of help, it doesn't matter how small the class is and how many adults are in the room, they need the right type of help.
It makes sense. It totally makes sense. And now, do you train teachers and professionals at all? Do you do any speaking engagements or any training in this area?
Well, I was a regional reading coach, and I am available for speaking engagements, presentations. I've done SEPTA meetings. I recently presented at my public library. I worked with a professor at LIU, and I did a program for her. So yes, I do professional development. I do programs for parents. Yes.
Do you find that rewarding, like teaching
Yes.
it to the professionals? And
Absolutely, because honestly, the more people you have who know about this, and especially those adults who are involved with children, you'll have more children able to read and write, and hopefully it will make a difference.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And how can people get in touch with you?
Well, I have a website,
What's your website?
high5literacy.com.
high5literacy.com.
And I write a blog, and so people could find my blog there, and obviously the book that I just wrote. I have my email address, faithborkowsky@gmail.com. My phone number's on the website as well.
That's great. And how could people purchase your book?
It's available on Amazon.
Amazon, yeah. Reading Intervention Behind School Walls, Why Your Child Continues to Struggle. What do you want people to take away from your book? Like, what is the main idea you want to convey?
Well, I want to let parents know that they should, if they feel something inside telling them something is wrong, they should really listen to their instincts. Go with it, explore it. Don't let someone tell you, wait and see, it's going to be okay. Because honestly, I've talked to so many parents, and they said early on they had a feeling that something wasn't right. And yet,
so basically, follow your gut.
follow your gut. And
It's like,
honestly,
that's just like a great approach. I think in
for
general,
anything,
right?
right.
Yeah,
Follow your gut.
We do need to follow our gut.
Exactly. And I think people want to believe, they say, well, teachers are the ones who have the education. And so I should trust. They're the professionals. And I'm not saying that they are misguiding parents purposely, but
Of
I
course
do
not, but
think that parents know their own children, and they really should follow that. Get children the proper help, learn what works best for them.
and their individual learning style.
Exactly. And as far as for teachers, administrators, I hope that they will pick up the book and maybe make a decision that will help children, and not just listen to a university because it happens to be a prestigious university telling you, well, this is what you should have in the schools. Well, for many children, it doesn't work. And I would hope that they would also read the research. It's out there. And it's very plain to see that many children need this type of Orton-Gillingham-based approach, a phonics-based approach that's systematic, explicit, that's cumulative, that really teaches the alphabetic code from the bottom up. And don't assume that everything is a reading comprehension problem.
Right.
Because if they cannot read the words, there is no comprehension strategy that will work if you can't read the words. So I think that's something to just be wary of. And I talk about all different types of learning issues having to do with reading, whether it's fluency, vocabulary, or a true comprehension issue. But I do believe that there is this underlying problem with reading words that could affect reading comprehension, and then we address the wrong thing.
Well, I'm so happy I got to talk to you today. I found this so informative. I really did. And it's great to talk to someone who's actually had success.
Thank you.
And I'm so happy that you came today. Thank you, Faith.
Thank you so much for
And
having me.
continued success with you and
Thank
your
you.
book and your practice.
Thanks so much. It was a
see you
pleasure.
soon.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
watching the Randi Lupo Show. Thanks for checking out the show. Be sure to follow Randi on Twitter at Randi Lupo. Visit her website at randilupo.com. Thanks to Broadband Box Office and VK Media. Have a great evening.